Before we begin the dialogue session, allow me to invite our moderator and panelists on stage. Firstly, I would like to invite the moderator of today's dialogue session. Please welcome the Executive Director of the CMCF, Encik Muhammad Mustafa Fazil bin Muhammad Abdul. Next, Yang Berusaha Associate Professor Dr. Chan Lai Fong, Yang Berusaha Dr. Ravi Barma Rao Paniselvam, as well as Yang Berusaha Mr. Kenny Lim. Encik Muhammad Mustafa Fazil, the stage is yours. Thanks.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Welcome back. Glad that we have you guys around today, and we're most appreciative for especially members of the media to actually take the time to come in and have a listen to what we have today. As you have heard from the speakers, panelists that I have with me on the stage this morning, the topic is not really that light and not to be taken as somber either. I think we have to take it with a very positive outlook in terms of managing issues when it comes to mental health, especially in regards to suicide cases. To frame this first and foremost, I think I would not want to simply go into the guidelines for media reporting. I think there needs to be a layer that we need to discuss first and foremost, and that is actually the mental health issue. We ought to understand first and foremost, or maybe inculcate some issues relating to suicide cases as well as the suicidal tendencies. So I would like to ask maybe Dr. Chan if you can tell us a bit more, frame for us a bit in terms of what actually goes into the mind of a person in a way where it might lead to the occurrences of suicidal tendencies and ultimately the act itself.
Thanks, Encik Mustafa. Yeah, we really do need to try and understand, as you framed it very nicely, I think, what goes through the mind of somebody who might be in suicidal crisis. To be honest, I don't think I'm the best person to speak on that. I think the best person to be able to speak on that is somebody who have actually experienced such a suicidal crisis, and they have gone through it, literally lived it, and come out of it and recovered, and be able to share with us, what actually, the depths of despair and what actually worked in their recovery. But just to summarize, when somebody is experiencing a suicidal crisis, second experience from our patients that we see, and people in the community that we've talked to, oftentimes the myth, as Kenny has shared, that a lot of us might think that somebody who has said or expressed that, I want to die, I want to end my life, without minimizing the depth and gravity of that statement, a lot of times what people actually mean is, I want to escape the pain. And the, in a sense, ultimate goal is not to die, but to escape the suffering that they cannot see an outlet for in the life that we're living. So in that crisis, there is, diminished capacity to see beyond the pain. So it looks as if, it appears as if, and it's a very real experience, that the only way out of this pain is to die, because in living there's so much pain. So if we can try and empathize and acknowledge that pain, then we're in a position to try and, I just thought of this term that I used recently, we need to validate the pain, but we need to navigate people out of that pain, and it might not be a formula that's the same for every person. So that's my take on it.
So to link that directly then to the befrienders, maybe, that's the description that's been given. How does the befrienders actually approach? You've given some instances in terms of how you deal and the many methods that you deal with. Aside from whatever else you can tell us, are your volunteers trained in any way to actually deal with these instances?
Okay, Yeah, so all our volunteers have to go through a training program of 8 sessions, 3.5 hours each, to prepare them to go on the phone. And that doesn't stop there, because after they have been trained, they will have to go under supervision. So all in all, it takes about 8 months for a person to be a confirmed volunteer.
Before they can actually...
No, they start to take course after 2 months, but they are being guided by a senior volunteer. So after 8 months, they can go on their own, and we believe that they have the skills to actually listen to someone who is suicidal on their own. So what we do is basically providing a space for them to talk freely. Because as I mentioned earlier, people who are suicidal, they have actually tried reach out to others. They have tried, most of them at least, have tried to talk to friends or family members about it. But a lot of times people don't actually understand about suicide, and a lot of people also do not have that kind of awareness. So people are afraid to talk about suicide. So what do I do if someone says, I want to die, I want to kill myself? What do I do? So I'd rather not talk about it, talk about something else. So the awareness is not there, that when someone is suicidal, there is a need to express it. And most of the time, after expressing it, they will be able to, for example, find a bit of relief. So that is what we do, to enable people who cause us to talk about it freely and not judge them.
Do you receive repeat callers, and do they are they normally comfortable with a particular friend, and do they ask for that friend again at your side? How do you...
Yeah, we do get a lot of repeat callers. We have a lot of callers who have been diagnosed and are going through treatment, are seeing psychiatrists, but we are playing a complementary role, because sometimes people who are struggling with mental health issues, they are seeing psychiatrists, but at the same time they also need people to talk to. So they do call us repeatedly, and it's up to the callers. Some callers would look for the same few befrienders to talk because they're more comfortable. You already know my story. But we also have a lot of callers who don't mind. What I need is basically just someone there to listen to me. So.
Dr. Ravi, what do you think about, that's an independent caregiver, if you like. What about the role of the family member? I mean, more often than not, they may not, sufferers would not tell any family member because it's a torment that they are handling individually. But how would one's family identify, or in terms of these tendencies? Do you have any insight?
So when we are talking about how family members are trying to identify suicidal behaviors, that's going on. Well, there are signs, but often more than not, a lot of signs go missed about this. People don't tell their families explicitly for many reasons. Each person's story is unique. Some people are heads of family. Some are children who do not want to worry their parents. Some who know already the situation at home is already not so good. There might be financial problems, there might be domestic issues as well. Let me not add to this that's going on in my mind. They might be there, might be there. But sometimes there are problems that unfortunately that are actually caused by the situation in the family itself, that they're being pressured or they're being living in a stressful situation. So ideally it would be very difficult to go through that. And there are some who also lived in such underprivileged environments where telling that could be extremely invalidating. That's this is that. So there is no one-fit-all answer. What we have found through and what people do in the work that people have done with people who have been suicidal is there is a change. There is a change from the baseline, whatever that baseline may be, the way they talk. Sometimes some people actually tell it very directly. Don't feel like doing anymore. They express suicidal ideations. Some people make indirect cues. They might make you don't need to maybe say very subtly that you don't need to worry about me anymore. This wouldn't be a problem and all of that. Some people might make arrangements as well, so that, or for a time that they might not be around, arrangements with regards to property and all that. That's a very subtle sign, giving away things as well. And then there's also the part where you see clear mental illness signs, people with low mood, not really engaging anymore, withdrawing from social events, people who are not doing well in school, performance drops in school, performance change, or even sometimes some people might become overtly very cheerful, or sudden change, like complete change of what they have been, and they see all of a sudden. Then there's also the real problem of coping with alcohol, substance abuse, and all that. There's so many of those signs and all that. So it's a big question. I've tried to answer it. Right? Question.
What about to any of you? I mean, in terms of your experiences with younger children, can you share anything that would lead to a very young person to explore the possibility of suicide?
Yeah, big caveat is I am a practicing adult psychiatrist, so probably my child and adolescent colleagues would be better in a better position. But I think some of the things that we need to understand is that, number one, I think we need to understand that young people, including sometimes tragically children, may have suicidal thoughts. Now, the danger is that when a young person actually expresses, whether directly or indirectly, that they have thoughts of suicide, oftentimes they're not taken seriously. And some of the reasons that may be so is because many adults think that children do not have the cognitive or mental capacity to even understand what is suicide or to even act on suicidal thoughts. Now, this is a very dangerous myth. As we have seen, children have died by suicide. So I think the first step to do is to, number one, take it seriously. If anyone, no matter the age, young, old, middle-aged, whatever, if they do express directly that I am thinking about suicide or I want to end my life, our first reaction is not to dismiss it as, come on lah, you can't be for real, or don't talk like that lah, that's a lot of times that, hey, no, shh, don't talk like that, it's wrong. When we have that reaction, the first reaction for the person who's actually expressing that is to clam up, because they obviously can see that you're not really in a position to handle it when I actually say it. So this is direct. So, indirect cues Ravi has mentioned just now. So even a young person, teenager, or even sadly, it's rare for children to take their own lives, but when it happens, it's extremely tragic. So if they have written something in a note and have alluded to the fact that they feel hopeless, they don't see any point in living anymore, or they're literally giving away all their favorite things and prized possessions, and just telling family members, take care, goodbye, I won't see you again. Take it seriously and explore it. And one of the things that a lot of people are afraid about is that if I talk about suicide, it will push the person to suicide, right? So that's that fear. I cannot talk about it because the minute I talk about it, then the person will do it. Now, the right frame to look at that is that if, like Kenny has mentioned, we allow the space for somebody who's already having suicidal tendencies to talk about it and to be listened to in a non-judgmental manner, then there is the opportunity for the person who's listening to actually navigate them away from suicide and figure out how to access help and all that. Of course, this has to be done sensitively. We do not want to be introducing methods to this person who are already thinking about suicide. That's not what we want to do. But we want to listen and we want to hear them out and we want to see what can be done to get this person the help that they need.
I can add about this, and again, not a child and as a psychiatrist to talk in depth about it, but mental illness or crisis in children presents very differently from adults. It can be anger, it can be school refusal. Children sometimes might not tell, they might write it in social media, and I think that's a valuable thing that we can learn about. And I think the important take home for what Prof. Chan was telling is we should never think that they might not have the cognitive capacity or even the physical capacity. A person who is young can find methods, and also a person who can be very debilitated might have also have thought of methods. And also the real sad thing is sometimes it's a lot to do with pain, and children might not know the extent, and I'm really talking about extent on which what that act can do. They may not be able to think so all in the depth of it, but they may not know how to solve a problem, seeing they are as children and all of that. So again, have to take it very, very seriously.
So I'd like to then link this to some of the things that we may see in the mass media, but especially so, I think, on broadcast media first and foremost, in programs that we see, not necessarily those that originate from here, but also in series or whatever. You know, I've had the experience where people were actually finding out how to do it through shows. You know, there are instances where this person's taking a heck of a lot of aspirin and so on and so forth. So what happens then is actually gives them sort of like an impetus in terms of, you know, is that actually possible? You know, that kind of thing. So what would your message be to media practitioners who are creating these kinds of content? I know that we have in these guidelines, and it's explicitly more for reporting, but what about general content creators in their movies or shows? What would you say?
We've actually just shared with Encik Mustafa CMCF, and I'm happy to share it with anybody who's interested to look at it. WHO has actually come up with a resource specifically for content producers, filmmakers, apart from reporting of real cases of suicide. So if you're even doing fictional portrayal, and I think this is the perfect opportunity to talk about 13 Reasons Why. The whole premise of the movie is coming from a space whereby one of the rationales of actually making such a movie is that we've got to get real, we've got to get authentic, we've got to tell it like it is, we cannot avoid talking about suicide, so this is it. It's coming from a space from some people, with all due respect, who have also lived experience, and they feel that the voices of people with lived experience cannot be shut down. Now, couple of thoughts on this. I completely agree that we have to talk about suicide, and the issue about something like 13 Reasons Why, where number one, the movie ends with death by suicide of the heroine. The thing is, how it was actually how she actually died was so graphic, and I've abstained from watching the movie because I kind of feel that I don't really need to watch the movie. I can get my entertainment from other things. But people who have watched it have told us that, it's like a manual. It's literally like a manual. You want to learn how to do it, watch it. So, and there has been, it's so explicit to the extent that the Netflix themselves have, after a lot of advocacy from a lot of groups and mental health professionals, people with lived experience, decided to delete the scene whereby the protagonist actually dies by suicide. The scene where it's, nothing is spared in terms of, to the imagination kind of thing. But beyond the explicit portrayal of the method, this framing about the reasons why this person, ultimately, in the sense, decided to take her own life. And of course, there are very heavy, serious issues like sexual abuse, bullying, which has to have a platform to address. But the problem is if the formulation of why somebody dies by suicide is too skewed, people who are in that position, who have experienced life adversities, and who may have other vulnerability to suicide, see this portrayal, they may feel that suicide is the solution because this person had gone through so many difficulties, and I'm like this person, and this person goes on to die. And not only that, in that movie, I believe, after the person dies by suicide, she becomes even more famous than she was in life. So that glorification and this whole idea about in death I have become even more famous is especially dangerous when it's portrayed to young people. The whole idea of contagion. So this whole framing about suicide as an end that is so, to be glorified is very, very problematic. And that not only happens in real life celebrity suicides, but as well as fictional portrayal. And studies have shown, a recent paper in a leading scientific journal has shown 3 months after Netflix 13 Reasons Why was released, the particular age group between 10 to 19, which is smack in the middle of, I think the heroine in the show was 17, there was a significant increase in deaths by suicide within that population, both in males and females, but more pronounced in females for obvious reasons. The protagonist was female, so there was more identification with the heroine in the movie. So there's a lot of issues around that.
Kenny, from the Befrienders experience, has there been any callers which actually link the media per se in terms of how they feel and urging them to commit such acts?
Okay, at the Befrienders, we do get a lot of students who visit us for their assignment, for their projects. And in discussion with them, I think a few years back when the show was showing, 13 Reasons Why, a lot of students actually told me that they were affected, more so when the student is going through some issues in their lives. So they were saying that the show is very, very triggering. So I've not watched the show, but I've decided to watch the scene because I wanted to know. Yeah. And yeah, it was very disturbing. It was very disturbing. Talking about celebrity death by suicide, in 2017, December 2017, when K-pop star Jonghyun died by suicide, we experienced an increase of emails from young people. I think about 3 times higher than the normal rate that we're getting. And people are telling us that they are triggered by the incident. This is someone that I looked up to. If someone who's so famous, so talented, can end up dying by suicide, what about me? So we do get an increase in calls. Also recently, I think was it last month, when another K-pop star died by suicide. On that day itself, when it was announced, I remember it was a Monday. I was on duty. Immediately when I saw it on the news, I received calls from at least 2 young girls who called out and said that they could relate to what has just happened. They were being cyberbullied, they were having mental health issues. So they called and they said they were triggered. Yeah.
So there's a lot of linkages here, I think, between the media content that we receive, and to the extent that it affects us on a daily basis more than we like to know, or actually even affect those under our care or those within our circle of friends or whatever, more than we appear to understand. But I think one of the thematic areas that all speakers have mentioned today is also links to self-regulation. So just like what you said, you chose not to watch a movie, for example, and also on different fronts. What is it? Sometimes there is a need for or cry for help. You actually choose to do something about it if you are able to. But if you can't, then there's always there's always other areas where we could look to. What do you think about with sensitivities on religion coming into play in terms of dealing with such mental health issues?
Just a quick one relating to what we've just talked about self-regulation. I mean, for someone who has capacity, they can make those decisions, especially of-age adults. They can make a conscious decision. What we're actually worried about are young people who sometimes may not have the sort of, well, for lack of a better word, wisdom to make these decisions. So, but again, it's a tricky, dicey thing to talk about censorship, and it's a free world, and especially when it comes to fictional portrayals, right? And who's to say what's supposed to be out there? One thing I would like to highlight is this: besides the industry themselves self-regulating, and in a sense, to a certain extent, self-censoring, Netflix kind of removing that seen, there have been guidelines that come up, by mental health professionals, whereby they give handles to, say, family members, parents, to have a discussion with their youth, their children or young people, should I not watch 13 Reasons Why? And it doesn't say things like, don't watch, but if somebody wants to watch, if your child wants to watch it, what are you going to do about it? Are you just going to let them watch and not have this conversation surrounding it? Are you going to watch it together with them? Are you going to supervise? And one of the, I think, key things that stuck in my head in terms of recommendations was to give some guidance to parents to try and bring that awareness to the child who's watching it, to say that, hey, look, no matter how real this feels, this is not real life. Sometimes for young people, the virtual and real life, the boundaries are very blurred. And this holds so much true when it comes to social media interactions. So I think in that sense, all of us here who have connections with our loved ones and our own network within our communities, I think all of us have the responsibility to be by the side of somebody who we know or may not know, who already have some other vulnerabilities, because we're not saying that media is the only risk factor, but people who are already vulnerable, we have to be more mindful and take extra care to walk with them and to kind of say that, okay, you've kind of watched it, how do you feel? And kind of mitigate things. If somebody's already distressed after watching it, what do you do about it? Do you just leave it? Or do you kind of have a conversation about, okay, it's fine, this is how you feel. How about getting some help about this? So it's not about shutting everything down and censoring things, but how do we actually extend that safety net so that if people are exposed, and sometimes we cannot completely avoid exposure to things that may not be so safe, how do we actually move forward and at least increase the protective factors?
Anything else to add? Okay, so in that regard, then I would like to ask about Dr. Ravi. You mentioned about Johari et al. Just now, right? Where the reporting in Malaysia is considered harmful. Was it?
It was more harmful than productive.
More harmful than productive. Can you elaborate more about that?
Which means that whatever that we have talked about in the guidance was actually was not adhered to, meaning this detailed description of methods. I'm not exactly quoting exactly from the paper, but when we say harmful, it means that the message that the media portrays was unsafe. Detailed description of methods. Methods, not just mentioning the methods, but exactly what, how, where, the whole details of it. So to the extent it becomes like an instruction manual. Usage of pictures of the deceased, that's something that if you're reading the papers even a couple of months back, you would have seen so many of that. And in fact, the whole framing of it, meaning that there's no outlines, it looks mostly, the talk is about, and also sometimes relating it to a single cause. That's actually very, very dangerous, saying that X causes people to die by suicide, or no, I'm trying to frame this safely, but this one thing. It's dangerous when you say this one thing causes something, because there are a lot of people who might experience from this one thing, this particular stressor, and then let's say that they are having difficulties, they consider that this could be the only option. And especially very much true when you're looking at younger people. Again, digressing back to young people. Young people sometimes, as Prof. Chan, I think that's a great word, wisdom. The word that they might not actually, they might think, they see things very literally like what it is. A picture of a person or a star on the moon, that's perfection. And if perfection breaks this way, who am I? And as well with this thing, and I said, oh, this person died because of this problem. I'm facing this problem. I'm stressed. I cannot cope with this. So yeah, they might choose. So these are the kinds of harmful things that you can see in reports.
So we're also looking at the fact that the age group that you were showing just now was between 21 to 29. Was it? It was the highest, right? So one might also think that is the age where a young person is about to start their life, getting a job or just graduate and whatever not, right? So is there sort of like a common theme that these callers are giving befrienders?
Okay, I think a lot of young people are struggling with changes in their life, something which is very new, and most of them are also facing challenges in coping mechanism. Okay, they find it difficult to cope with changes, or for example, when something major happened in their lives. So that could be something which is very new to them, and they have no idea how do I deal with it. So a lot of them are going through this kind of issues. But the good thing is that they are reaching out to us. We are also getting emails from people as young as 10 years old, 11 years old, and highly suicidal. At that age, they are already expressing suicidal thoughts. And these are people who are struggling mainly at home, and from home, it actually affects them when they go to school, relationship with friends, their studies. So the way we look at it is that it's good that they're reaching out. But another issue here is young people are more aware of what's happening with them nowadays, and a lot of them are saying things like, I need help, okay? And telling our parents that I need to see a professional, for example. But the issue here is parents are not open to it. Parents are saying things like, there's nothing wrong with you, you are actually okay. It's just a phase, for example. Or even worse, going back to your question of religion, right? Some of them even say that, hey, you just need to pray more, we just need to pray more. Religion is a protective factor, but it's also a double-edged sword. If you use it the wrong way, then it's not helpful.
Just like to echo what Kenny mentioned just briefly. Number one, like he's alluded to, we are super interconnected right now with, the globalness of things and internet. There's no divide between somebody here and Africa and New Zealand, whatever. So whatever affects, somebody from the other side of the world who may be a complete stranger to you, and if you are somebody who literally lives on social media, you are very affected by it. And like what Kenny has mentioned, there's a huge stigma that is a huge barrier for help seeking. We've heard this from also teachers who are in the position whereby, a child or a student is obviously struggling and they really want to bring them to health services, whether it's just general health services or mental health services. But they, at the risk of, we're not trying to put all the blame on parents because they are the major source of support and we need to support parents. Sometimes families have very complex dynamics and issues, which go beyond today's discussion. But I think the point I'm trying to make here is when it is viewed that, it is literally the end of the world if somebody comes and sees a psychiatrist. I'm the least favorite specialist in my hospital, that's for sure. It's like the end of the world for the young person. No more career options, everybody's going to put a black mark on you, you're going to be labeled a mental case, crazy, there's no hope for you. So this kind of myths have to be busted because we have had highly functioning professionals, doctors, lawyers, you name it, who have come through our doors, who have received treatment, who have gone on to function very, very well. And these are powerful advocates to speak to society, to say that, now if you are struggling, right, but if you receive the help that you need, and it comes in a package here, it's not just about medications or seeing the psychiatrist. My patient who had treatment-resistant mood disorder, who had a whole host of treatments from medication to psychotherapy, is actually contacting befrienders on a daily basis, and that's kind of his lifeline. So it's not just one thing, it's everything. Of course, family support. So I think we need as a society to kind of break down and bust that stigma to say that somebody who is ill can recover, but you need to give the proper resources and the tools for this person to recover. So I think that's a message that we need to share with everybody.
And I think that's essential as well when it comes to the reporting of such cases, right? So, in your opinion then, between the reporting of such suicide cases in the print media What's the standard that you feel it is right now? You know, is it an improving standard? Over the past several years, what's your take on it?
I think we are all looking who's going to answer this question in front of a lot of media people. I'm just going to say that when we do work, which we've been doing, when we talk about media guidelines and all, there will be people who will actually benefit and the reporting actually does improve. But one thing is that we have yet to reach all of them, and I do understand that from the side of professionals, we don't really understand the media process, and we really need to, our interventions need to go through the media process. Instead of giving a report card grade for this, I don't think that we will be able to judge it effectively, because in Malaysia, very uniquely, and it's very well highlighted by the Victor et al. Paper, we are a country that we have many languages. It's really many, because it's truly many, because not just West Malaysia, but in East Malaysia, there's so many different languages. There's not just print media, online media, there are groups as well, that report news, like local community groups. There can be just a Taman group that reports it, or a local small Pekan group that reports it, that they share all these news. And the thing is, it's important to understand, to acknowledge this heterogeneity of it. That's one. And important for us also to understand the process in which they go through that. It's not just the reporter who reports it, they report to an editor, they also report to a company, and we also have to understand there is a business model to that. There are existing fears. If I go safe reporting, some people view safe reporting as censorship. That's a misnomer, but yeah, that's something. So if I report like this, do I lose business? I'm going to lose business when two other people are doing it. Oh, public appetite is not this. I was once, when I was talking to someone, I said, our particular language readers want only this. And I sort of gave them the Starbucks example. Starbucks came all the way to this country and convinced us from 2 ringgit coffee to 14 ringgit coffee. They actually sold good coffee. So that's what I try to talk to media professionals, is to increase that people will read what they are offered to. People will consume what is actually available. You buy things that you know that are available in shops. So that's one of the things. So to understand that, I think that's the work that is the future of our work in media work, is to, for us and media, to get much closer and to understand that process as well. Because I really don't think it's fair to put all the blame in media, and when and the pressures they face on the newsroom is immense. I actually feel very much safer to actually work on the health side, with all our than working in the media. So that's what I've learned recently.
Okay, that's cool, because I think like what was said, there needs to be an integration of many stakeholders into this particular issue, and it's great that there is understanding between all parties, between the risks and rewards in terms of churning out such news. But obviously, we are very worried about the citizen reporting side. Yeah, because they may not be aware of these guidelines or even be exposed to,
Let me share something. People, they say that these are one of the, they have this notoriety, that the story that these groups are the most difficult to penetrate. In fact, it's actually quite easy, because they have actually, I'm not saying it's easy, you have to have a flair of it to how to go about it. First of all, the people listen to people that are their stakeholders, meaning that you are locally, like my local sites, I can actually talk to the administrators, and once you tell people, make people aware of it, you do realize that they also can improve. Giving how you give feedback really matters, and also, but of course these are the small groups, but everybody in public, that is the bigger issue, the safe messaging part of that. That's where safe messaging comes in.
Yeah, I think the 6 points there, minimize harm, whether you've told the truth, whether you've taken enough care in your tone and language, have you been to see responsibly doing it, and to avoid stereotypes, and also to provide the helplines and support. I think those are really key messages which anybody can actually inculcate into their their daily reporting. Yeah. So and further to that, whilst we have this particular guidelines, which is several pages long only, as opposed to the 30 plus odd pages that you mentioned just now, where do you see this going within the next 1 or 2 years? will there be another review, or will there be more engagement, or what's your kind of like a, not to say wish list, but hope for it?
I'll take wish list. I take wish list anytime. So I'm glad you asked that question, Mustafa, because there has been some work going on, and I'll shamelessly plug it right now, since we have many stakeholders here, and we are very happy because we are here to learn from the media community. Because I'm not going to say I'm in any form of expert in terms of how the media works. So we are really here to listen. So one of the things that we've done, and very thankful for CMCF support, is that we've managed to engage, of course, in a more academic community, people who have been in the media industry, ex-journalists, and now in social work, suicide prevention from Hong Kong, who have come down to Malaysia and run media workshops, a really small one, in collaboration with the University of Malaya and a whole host of other stakeholders. So there was some awareness there. So it's a bit more hands-on now, you give one booklet and then you expect people to translate it into change in practice, very susah, isn't it? So hands-on workshops, but that was super small scale. And we had what we call a focus group, which also very, very small scale, where we invited members of the media community, from reporters, content producers, media students, to have their views on what they actually, what were the views about, what is safe reporting, what's the current situation, all the questions that we have been discussing just now, and what do you think about the guidelines, and it was, I'm not sure whether it's surprising or not, the level of awareness of the existence of the guidelines was not as high as expected. So I think there's a lot more work to be done, and we have some of our collaborators here from the University of Nottingham, whom I'm sure are very happy to chat with you. There is already a project that will kick off in a larger focus group, whereby I think it's going beyond awareness. We want to hear and listen from important stakeholders in the media community. How do you take this forward? But even before how do you take this forward, as mentioned, is this 2004 guideline relevant in 2019 and beyond? I think there's a lot of work to do the revision, and I think a revision is pointless if it's all going to come from the health side. It's not going to work, because we really need to hear from all of you what is user-friendly, and what do you see as things that can move this forward, and what do you see as barriers? Because it's, again, not much point to have something on paper and not implementable. And beyond implementation, we also want sustainability, whatever the political climate is. So this is when we really, really need to hear from stakeholders, and we have some initial engagements with people from outside Malaysia who are extremely keen, who are in the media, previously in the media industry themselves, people like Dr. Anne Luth from UK, and she is actually a media academic, and they're really interested to capacity build here. So that's it sounds very exciting to us, but it's not going to work if we're not going to see how relevant that is in our local context. There's so many opportunities to look into this and move this forward.
From a perspective of Suprema, was it what do you think about the guidelines, and where would you like to take it further?
I think if anything about Suprema, I think Prof. Chan should be the one who should answer, since he's our lead. But I think I'm just going to echo whatever Prof. Chan has said. The guidelines were from 2004. In 2019, news is consumed differently. The guidelines is about media. It should be primarily coming from media practitioners. And media practitioners should be the main stakeholders, and not just them. Media affects whoever that media is affected. You should take, it's not just one person, it's not just mental health professionals or just academics. It should include mainly the media, the people with lived experience, the voices of people with lived experience who actually understand. Because often, more than not, all of it looks very academic and very dry on the paper. So many people get triggered, so many people this thing, it's not resonating. But unless they have, when they're preparing the guideline, if when you're preparing for it, or when you're making a guidance when they are involved, and also it's important to make sure the diversity of our media is represented in the Malaysian media guidelines. We need to look beyond mainstream media. We need to look beyond just one or two languages. We need to not just look at Malaysia as though we are just in Kuala Lumpur. We need to look at people who will be reading it in Kelantan, in Sarawak, in Penang, in Johor, in Sabah, to see that the guidelines, and that's actually the true challenge of forming a media guideline for a country where you actually speak many languages, and media is so. Then there's some, if you would have seen, there are some news portals that use both Malay and English in the same article. How do you go about that? So language is one. So that's what we hope is that the guidelines do get revised, and do get, and also touching on social media and how to use social media itself. I think that one of the good guidance that people can look at the moment is chat-safe guidelines from Australia. They're doing great work. There's a lot to learn from how they do the work and how they're making education materials there. It's done by, it's meant for young people, so it's actually young person led, and to see, and people with lived experience led. So media also, so the future guideline should be where it's co-produced. It's media, people with lived experience, probably we just as a side, or maybe we are there, just there about it.
And Kenny, you did mention that once the telcos have allowed for people to reach out to befrienders free, without any charges, there has been a difficulty for people to get in touch. I think they've jammed up the lines. So that is also, I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, because it's giving, different signals. What do you comment on?
Okay, we want to look at it as something positive, that people are open to reach out. The thing is that we are also trying to let people know that not only Befrienders KL is offering such service. If you talk about Befrienders alone, there are 9 centers. And apart from Befrienders, there are also other NGOs who provide such services. Although they are not 24 hours, but there are other avenues. So to those who try to reach out and couldn't reach out, I think our message to them is keep trying, because eventually you will be able to get in touch, or also try other means of getting in touch with us. You can send an email, you can also do WhatsApp, So, and we are also trying to, have more lines in the near future. So,
That's good to know.
Just like to add, I think this is where media can play a very positive role here. We've actually compiled with the help of a lot of people kind of a laundry list of crisis lines beyond Befrienders. Befrienders is there, and all the different centers, and more importantly, the other providers which actually can handle other languages. So there is some kind of resource that we're more than happy to share. And maybe one sort of take-home is that whenever an article or whatever comes out in the media, you always see Befrienders number there, isn't it? So we will spam everybody with this laundry list of all the other providers that can offer crisis helplines as well.
Well, whether we like it or not, we're almost up to the hour that we've been allotted for this panel session. Before I make some closing remarks, can I just have all 3 panelists maybe just have a departing word, anything that you would like to convey to those who are here and maybe out there as a closing remark? Maybe Kenny can start.
I think I would like to refer to one of your slides, Dr. Ravi, that quoted on Victor et al., the research done. From the research, it shows that the reporting of suicide in Malaysia is still very much quite low. That means a lot of suicides are not being reported. So I think what is important is also to report suicide openly but positively, because if suicides are being reported positively and following the guidelines, it can actually create awareness. It can tell people who are struggling that this is happening, it's okay to feel suicidal, but what's more important is what can you do when you're feeling suicidal? Where can you go to for help? Who can you go to for help? There is help that is available. So in terms of creating more awareness, I think it's important to report about suicide responsibly.
I think I'm just going to build on a bit on what Kenny has shared. The fact that the thing is reporting is important. It's also important that we don't just give very general answers like go here, go there. When we are doing a local news, we should probably provide local helplines, local services, and that's the thing. And the rule of safe messaging and safe reporting is one of the things that I think it's about the context, it's about the content, and it's also about the volume as well, how much it goes about. And ultimately, the one who decides the safe reporting is the person producing that communications, which is yourself, not what your culture is doing and what would the economy, wherever you're in the space you're in. This one I have to actually credit Wenli, who has actually taught me when I asked her opinion on this. So yeah, that's how I end this.
I'd like to just share maybe briefly that safe reporting, safe messaging, responsible reporting is a spectrum, and it is very audience and context dependent. So there's no one size fits all, but maybe what's helpful is that, if we are not sure where our news is going to reach, is a bit unseen and it's public, then it would be more helpful to err on the side of being more conservative and cautious. But then there is definitely the space whereby, for example, if your message is to policymakers, for example, to make public spaces safer, there is no beating around the bush or hiding behind walls. You have to be as explicit as possible, even with methods, because if you do not know the extent of the problem, you cannot fix the problem. So what I think we're trying to say is that, I hope that, the message, it doesn't come across as like, what also cannot say, you really cannot say anything. No, it depends on who you're talking to, who is going to receive it, and what context is your message framed within. And I'm just, so delighted and so happy today because, we have this space to have this conversation. And I think I can safely say that this is not going to be the only conversation or the end of a conversation. And I hope that, all of you here would go back to your workplaces, go back to your friends in your communities to continue the conversation so that this is something sustainable, ongoing, evolving, and we would love to hear more from you.
Thanks. So, in closing, let me just talk a bit about self-regulation within the perspective of the CMCF. So, we enforce the Malaysian Communications and Multimedia Content Code, and in that there is also the broadcasting guidelines. And one of the clauses or paragraphs there talks about news and current affairs. So, pursuant to those guidelines, what we have always asked is for the news to be reported objectively, accurately, balanced, truthful, so on and so forth. But we also take into account the privacy and sensitivities of others. Having said that, we would say that these guidelines on media reporting on suicide would also fall within the ambit of such self-regulation. Because what we want is to actually have the kind of reporting which enriches the knowledge of the people receiving it. And that essentially will be up to the reporters, the journalists. We've set out the minimum standards, it's up to you to do it. So that in essence will be the best part of self-regulation, where you will not be prescribed word for word what to say, but we allow for such creativity in allowing for such content to be delivered in the most conscientious and ethical manner. So that is what our wish list will be. And further to that, I think we should support this initiative and also these guidelines and whatever that comes after this. And we hope that there will be more conversations, as you said, and there will be more understanding from the masses, especially with exceptional understanding from those involved in social media. You know, either through a particular portal, online portal, what have you, or even under our own user-generated content site. Yeah. So that is a message for all. And before I end this, one other thing is that CMCF got involved with this on the 20th of February 2019, where we participated in a workshop relating to this. One of our parting words to Dr. Chan and also with her colleagues at UM and whatnot is that we will look into trying to get this back on, in the forefront as best as we can. And I hope CMCF has fulfilled that promise for today. So in that sense, we thank you very much for actually coming and taking your time off and spending some of your valuable time and sharing your knowledge with everybody here. And we thank the audience as well for coming over. And we hope that in the future, when we have more of this, there'll be more attendees. So I think I will pass back to the Master of Ceremonies, and thank you very much. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh.
Thank you everyone for gracing our event with your presence, and we really appreciate it. Thank you very much on behalf of the CMCF. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.